as usual, I like to try to point out some unique ideas or unique approaches of the Rebbe in different sichos. And in this sicha, we see the Rebbe's approach where no part of the Torah is separated from another part. We see this often when the Rebbe speaks about this concerning Pnimis HaTorah and Nigla. There can't be a stira between the way Chassidus learns Pshat in something and the way Nigla learns Pshat in something. Even though externally they seem to be two different Perushim, but they have to be linked together. Because the Rebbe's whole approach is always that the Torah is a Torah Tmima. It's a complete Torah. The same thing the Rebbe is going to do now with Halacha and Agadah. It's going to be some interesting things in Halacha over here. He's going to analyze a story in Agadah, a story in the Gemara, or a combination of stories in the Gemara, and explain them with Halacha type of approaches. And to see how the machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and other Tanoim is actually a different approach in halacha about how we look at certain things when we have, let's say, two choices in front of us. As we will see the way the Rebbe takes this. Okay, we're about to begin. Why does it say twice Nachmu, Nachmu in this week's Haftarah? Because they had two Bate Mikdashes destroyed by his Rishon, by his Sheni, so therefore it says Nachmu, Nachmu, that Inyan Nechama Yeh Kafel. So the Rebbe asks a few short questions on this. What does it mean, a double Nechama? You're not going to build two Bate Mikdashes, you're going to build only one. So what's the pshat that you have a double Nechama? Mitzad Sheni, Yedua HaKushi HaPashut, Ma'u hayisnin shebemisnachmim kiflayim im halako hay bekiflayim. You're saying you got hurt twice and you're going to become healed twice. Is that a big deal? Let's say a person chas v'shalom got he got hurt in his foot and he got hurt in his leg. He says, guess what? We'll heal you and we'll stitch you up, not just your arm, you'll stitch up your leg also. Is that a big deal? You got hurt twice. You get fixed up twice. It's Nachmu, Nachmu Ami, a big deal. Nechama bekiflayim. You got two hurts. You got two wounds. You got to be twice fixed up. Advarim yuvnu al pidei hezber siyam mesachtas makis shagam sham yesh loshin kfula shal nechama. Like we'll soon bring at the end of the story that the Chachamim told Rabbi Akiva, Akiva Nichamtanu. It says twice that loshin, and from that, the way the Chachamim told Rabbi Akiva twice, Akiva Nichamtanu, we'll understand in our parsha why it says Nachmu, Nachmu. V'gam sham medubar al ha'churban v'ha'galus, shal kach bo keif ha'alosh Nichamtanu. Well, if you do it, shinyon eterish b'ksav misbayrim b'terish b'alpem, harikach gam b'inaneinu. So even though in Terish b'ksav all it says is Nachmu, Nachmu, there's no explanation why. But if you look in Teresh Malpeh, at the end of Masechtas Makis, you'll know what the meaning is twice Nechama. B'soif Masechtas Makis, now the majority of the Sikh is going to talk about this shtickle Gemara Masechtas Makis, really analyzing and breaking it down, every piece of the story over here in Masechtas Makis, and based on that, at the end of the Sikh is going to bring it back to Nachmu. So it's important to just pay attention and see all the details that he's going through over here in the Gemara. The Seif and Saktas Makis and Meres HaGemara, V'kvar Hoyer, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Lazar, Ben Zayv, Rabbi Shuv, Rabbi Akiva, Mahalchim Baderech, V'shamu Koil HaMoyne Shol Roimi, Miplata, Berochik, Me'avesr Mil. They were hearing it from the what's called the plaza over there. They heard that's a big tumult 120 mil away. In other words, that was a successful city. It was a big city. It was a major city. Ischilu boichin, these tanoim, Rabbi Akiva, on the other hand, mesachik. Amr loim nematem mesachik. Amr lohem va'atem nematem boichin. Amr loy halalu kushiyim. There's a different nusk on the bottom. Goyim, shemishtachvim, la'atzavim, makatrim, alvez chichavim, yoshvim, betach, v'hashket. V'anu beis hadoim ragle lekeinu, the footstool of the Eibishter, sarv ba'eish, v'loy nifke. For that very same reason that you're crying. That was one story. A completely separate story happened afterwards. Shuv pamachas hayoel mirushalayim, kim shegiel laharatzoifim karu b'gdeihem. Like the din is brought down that as soon as you see Yerushalayim b'churbana, there's a mitzvah to tear. That's why some people have a minhag to go the first time they see the koisel. They go only after Chatzos on Friday when you're not allowed to prava avelos, because the shaila about kriya. Kim shegiel laharabayis rosh shul yoytze shiyatzer beis kodesh hakadoshim yischilo hein boichin Rabbi Akiva mesachik. Amrullah, the same thing again. What are you doing laughing? Give a look at what terrible things are going on. Amrulahem neimatam boich. Amrullah, malkim shekasav boy v'azor akarev yumos v'achshav shualim hilchu boy v'loy nivke. Amrulahem lakach ani mesachik. The chsiv va'ida li edim nemonim es uriah hakoyin v'zachariah ben Yevarachiyah. So the Gemara asked, the Chazal asked in this, what does it mean that Eidim Nemanim will testify about the Geula, or will testify Bechlal, Uriah Kohen and Zachariah ben Yevarachiyah? It doesn't make any sense. These are two people that lived in different times. V'chima inyan Uriah etzel Zachariah. Uriah b'mikdash rishon, v'Zachariah b'mikdash sheni. Elatola kasav nevuasi shel Zachariah b'nevuasi shel Uriah. B'Uriah chsiv lachein beglalchem tziyon sada techrash. Which is a very terrible gang in the Churban. It says that in the beginning, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, it was only burned down. But then later on, when they made even worse gzeirus against the Eden, so then they mamish plowed over the whole Makom HaMikdash that it shouldn't be recognizable at all. So that's a really, really terrible Yeridah. And B'scharya Ksiv, B'ad Geula, Oid Yesh V'Zakenim V'Zakenis B'Rechovis Yerushalayim. And then Rabbi Akiva says as follows: Ad shloi niskayim nevuasi shel Uriah, hayisi misyari shloi tiskayim nevuasi shel Zachariah that will have zakenim v'zakenis b'choyves Yerushalayim. Achshav sheniskayim nevuasi shel Uriah b'yadua shenevuasi shel Zachariah miskayems. Now the Gemara concludes. This is the lashon of the Gemara. B'lashon hazeh amruloi. Akiva Nichamtanu, Akiva Nichamtanu. The double lashon of Nechama, that from this the Rebbe is later going to learn out about the pshat, what's it mean Nachmu, Nachmu. Lamroi sheket ha-gemara nalvum chelik ha-godah shebetoyra v'kayim klal. She'ein lemeidim halacha ma'agodim, harei zeu kasher al-limud ma'agodah soiser al-halacha. In other words, if you see halacha, it says like this. And in the Haggadah, in the Gemara, it's the opposite, so you say. You don't go ahead and say halacha. You don't pass it according to Haggadah. You go according to what it says in the halacha. Achikha ein stira nitem lilmed halacha ma'Haggadah listamach al klach, which is going to be the gang of the Rebbe over here to learn out certain halachas from what we're talking about. V'oid afim toimar she'ein lemeidim me'Haggadah halacha l'maisa apoyel, even when there's no stira. Which is the main thing that the Rebbe is going to take out of here. A svara, an approach in halacha, lavdavka halacha l'maisel poy. Noisav al kach harebinyanenu ein eila divrei Haggadah belvad. Divrei Haggadah means there's a nice drash and a pasuk that from that comes some type of achsidush of the hair, an interesting approach. Here we're talking about Maisarav. These cried and they were laughing. So it's mamish the way they acted. Which means that Rabbi Akiva is the foremost halachic authority. So the Rebbe says that even in this Haggadah story, there must be svaris that are applicable for halacha. B'miyuchad kishbechel kasheni ein mesuper rak al boichim u'mesachek ella al ma'isa shel halacha kivin she'egiu laharat soifim karu b'gdeyim the dinner la'eved hachi, that it's take brought down halacha from that story that there's a chiyuv of kriya when a person sees the Beis HaMikdash destroyed. So you see that in this Haggadah there is a piece that's mamish negei la'halacha. So if so, the rest of it can also be to a certain degree applied la'halacha. So now the Rebbe is going to ask a series of questions. First of all, in general, Kalosh na Gemara mahen asvaras hal hilchiyas shem halachiyas shem nagoyim machlokes bechacham Rabbi Akiva. Mikatze lakatze, miboichel masachik. What's the svara? Why would they even have such extreme views? Akiva Nichamtanu. Harimuvan shegam lesvarosam shehizchilu boichin yeshmokin balacha. Even though at the end they seem to admit and accept what Rabbi Akiva said, still in all they weren't, they weren't little kids. They obviously had some type of halacha svara while they were crying. Ubemiyuchad kasher besipar arishin ein musker sha'amaru Akiva Nichamtanu. It's only in the second story. Kfi shemishtam mekach sheshuvas Rabbi Akiva ura arishin. Like we said, it was two separate events. The Rebbe is going to point that out later as well. Even though it was two separate events, the first time when Rabbi Akiva explained that first of all, he didn't say Nichamtanu. Not only that, but when the second event happened, they cried again, and he laughed again, and they were still asking him, what are you laughing? So in other words, whatever he told them the first time around was not enough to convince them, first of all, that they shouldn't cry the second time around, and also that they shouldn't even ask him, why are you laughing? They said, okay, we know why you're laughing already. No, they still asked him why you're laughing. So in other words, these are two separate things. So again, what was the svara of the Chachamim in the first case? What was the svara of the Chachamim in the second case? Now he's going to ask a few diyukim. I like when the Rebbe says chelkam. In other words, there's, except for he has over here, Aleph Beis Gimel Ches, he has 8 different diyukim, and the Rebbe calls them chelkam. But anyway, Aleph, Ma Yishayel Rabbi Akiva Bnei Matem Boichim, Hare Borer, Kasher Shoymim, Koil HaMoyne Shal Roimi, Shechnivas Beis HaMikdash, Ubemiyuchet Kasher Roimus Beis HaMikdash, Besichur Banoi, Shul, Sheyetzim Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim, Nidrashim Evel Abchi. For sure it needs that. Why would Rabbi Akiva ask them Mipnei Matem Boichim? Beis, yes or okay. Min HaSipur HaSheni, Kishegiu Lahara Tzoifim, Karu B'gdeihem. It doesn't say that Rabbi Akiva didn't do so. Move on, Shagam Rabbi Akiva, Noakach. Kiloimer Gam, Hu Isabel Bekacha, Churna Bais. Umadu Shoyel, Mipnei Matem Boichim. Gimel, HaPosik Vazora Korev Yumas, We're talking about the facts went out of the Kodesh Kodashim, right? If you want to bring a pasuk that talks about the Kodesh Kodashim. Hazara Korav Yumas is not talking about the Kodesh Kodashim. El al avoda beis hamikdash, that if Yisrael goes over, a Levi goes over, and does the avoda by the Mizbeach, Hazara Korav Yumas. We're not talking about the Kodesh Kodashim. Hoya Eifal Tanoim Sherotzu Lahavi Shasisra Knisel Kodesh Kodashim Lahavis HaPasuk Ve'al Yavei B'chol Eis Al HaKodesh. That's talking about the Kohen Gadol, and it's talking about the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Afilu the Kohen Gadol also comes the Kodesh HaKadoshim Mechol HaShana, that he's only allowed to go in on Yom Kippur. That would have been a powerful response. Give a look. A shul is coming out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, a place where the Kohen Gadol was only allowed to go there once a year. Dalut mais v'ras Rabbi Akiva actually niskayim in the vasit shel Uriah yisim misyarish like niskayim in the vasit shel Zechariah. Keitzad yitochen lahatel suffix shenavol like niskayim. Rabbi Akiva was doubting that. I didn't know. I wasn't sure until I saw this. This is what it seems to be from the simple reading. Once he saw the shul coming out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, now I know the nevuah would be niskayim. And before the shul went out, he didn't think that the nevuah would be niskayim. B'miyuchad l'fi maimer Chazal kol dibra v'dibra shiyatzim pekadosh baruch hu l'toiva afil al tanai loy chazer b'y. The famous difference is between a nevuah al ra'ah or a nevuah al toiva. It says when the Eibishter says a nevuah for bad, the Eibishter could change it, like it happened over there with Yoina and Ninveh. That the Eibishter said that I'm going to turn over Ninveh in so many days, and he didn't. Why? Because a nevuah on bad could be turned around, but a nevuah on good has to be. So here, this was a nevuah. The nevuah was that the base of Mikdash will be rebuilt. Zakein of his kainis yeshuv berchavis rishalayim. How could Rabbi Akiva even have a suffix that would be niskayim? Hey. Madu mitzayin Rabbi Akiva dafkas on nevuah tzi and tzada techrash v'loy nevuahs churb negula acheres kedemis. There's other places before that pasuk in the Nevi'im where it speaks about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Why specifically did he pick that pasuk? Vav Madu mafareshes hagemara shmois kol atanoim harei ikirush Rabbi Akiva savar v'nog acheres mehem v'yochel hayel likosav k'mkoimus acherim kvar hayu Rabbi Akiva uzkeinu v'kadoimim. There's a lot of times that the Gemara uses that lashon. Why does it have to say every single name of the people that were arguing? Zayin, Madua Amr Chachamim, Akiva Nichamtanu, Rakmim Ura Sheni, V'loi Barishin. Ches, Beloshen Hazeh Amr Loi Akiva Nichamtanu. Mau Kefel Kol Haloshen. What does he have to tell her? Beloshen Hazeh. In this lashon. Just say, the Chachamim Amru, Akiva Nichamtanu. Mao Adiuk, Beloshen Hazeh Amru Loi. Marsho Omer Al Shayel Zayin V'ches, Kofla Advarim Al Shem Shnei HaMaisim Shezachar. Why did they say twice? One was for the case where they saw the shul go out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and one was for the case where they saw the tumult at Rome was being so successful. But the Rebbe asks on the Marsha, Ach Shavosei, the Resh Hezber, Shnei HaMaisim Hayu Behefsik Shel Zman U'Mokim. Harishon Eira Kishayim Mahalchim B'derech L'Roimi, and we'll soon speak about they were going there because there was certain Gzeira in Rome, and because there was a Gzeira that they had to go many times. The Chachamim traveled to Rome because the Caesars came up with new decrees against the Yidden. They came up with new Gzeiras, so they traveled over there to stop the Gzeira. This happened at a later time. Vasheni Shuv, it says Shuv. Shuv Pam Acheres. It doesn't say part of this trip. Kisha Oil and Shalayim, the case of them Nanim, B'Shuva Achas. So how do you say that one response helped for both, and he was menachem them both? It was two different cases, two different situations. How do you combine it?
I said before one was on Churban and one was on Galus.
No. He was just using the term, the Nevuas, there's Nevuas on Churban and Geula that he could have used earlier. He didn't say that one was on Churban and one was on Galus. One story was, but even if it was, but he didn't say that, it's still two separate events. So at the end of a different event that happened at a different time, so then all of a sudden you're telling me Akiva Nichamtanu on an event that happened, who knows when, how many months, or maybe years even before? Okay, so first of all, the Rebbe is going to give a general approach, and the Rebbe is going to say that we can't use this general approach. But Pashtus nitten lahasbir shebeshnei hamurois niris nekudim shutefes, a common denominator shebeshitasim shel Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Yeshua, ubeshitasim shel Rabbi Akiva min tzad hasheni. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Yeshua ros hashlili shebemeura. Rabbi Akiva ros hatoiv sheyetzim akach. Why? That was his shitta. Beikvius l'shitasai kidvarav makmacher la'olam yehei adam ragil loymar kol the Ovid Rachmana l'tav Ovid kvish hagemar misaperes shekach hoysa b'dark b'poyol. Like the whole story of that, they was traveling and his rooster died and his candle went out and the whole story he's going to mention it a little bit later. So therefore, lefiza nitn lahasbir shagemara mevira shnei urois biyachad lamroi sheiru bezmanim u'mekayim shoinim, because it's one shitta of Rabbi Akiva that goes through all of these. Loi mipnei sheiru la'oisam tanoim ella beglal anakudam shutefes b'shittas Rabbi Akiva b'shneim lirois b'hoives hatoiv sheyetzim b'kol davar m'ucher yoser. So it was a l'shitasa. So they both had the same idea. They were both Rabbi Akiva's approach, and that's why he put it together. Ach lefia amar yesh lahavin aleph ma'u achidush b'shittas Rabbi Akiva b'chol echad min hamurois hanal u'ma b'chlal achidush b'shneim be'inyan loymar kol Ovid Rachmana l'tav Ovid. There is the Gemara. Whenever, let's say, a Mishnah brings a few cases or a few examples, or even a Braisa, the Gemara will ask, why do you need to bring so many different examples? Or in Nachronim, let's say, there is the Rebbe's famous sichel, let's say, about explaining about the machloikson of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is bekoyach versus bepoyel, whatever that is. But the point is And you see it by many different machloikos. So the Rebbe will say, as long as you see that they're arguing about Mekoyach v'Poil, let's say by Ner Chanukah, why do you need to bring it by somewhere else also? But the reason is because in each case there's something different that you may think doesn't apply over here. The Rebbe wants to know the same thing over here. If it's Rabbi Akiva's shita to say in everything, Kol Ma David Rachman Lo Ta'avavid, why does the Gemara have to tell you this? You would know already how he looks on the Churban Beis HaMikdash. The fact that he has to tell you these two cases is because every one of these two cases adds something to Rabbi Akiva's shita on either Kol Ma David Rachman or something else, as we'll soon see. And that's why it has to give all these examples. Another thing, base, who klal she'ein be'machloikis v'kach niftzak b'shulchan aruch. It's actually a halach in Shulchan Aruch. It says that he brings it down, Simmer Reish Lamed, that the last sif, it says there openly, in the big Shulchan Aruch, it says, a person should always say, whatever they... It's interesting, because usually you don't find such things. Shulchan Aruch tells you what to eat, what brachas to say, whatever. Just says this alone, a separate sif. It's not even part of something else. Others bring it down as part of the din that kishem shemavarach ala toiva kach mavarach ala ra. So they bring down, like it says, kol ma david rachman l'tavavid. But over there in Siman Reish Lamed, it's not about that at all. It's just a sif by itself. Kol ma david rachman l'tavavid. So therefore, ve'ein mistaber Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Yeshua yachloku alav on this principle, on this rule. B'miyuchad shegam kasher amru b'me'ura hasheni Akiva Nichamtanu ein hechrech sheyischartu al daitum. By just saying that you comforted us doesn't mean that they stopped believing what they believed before. But Kol Ma David Rachman L'Tavavid is very hard to say that they argue with that principle of Rabbi Akiva. They're going to say, no, you shouldn't say that whatever the Rebbe says, whatever the Rebbe does is for good. That doesn't make any sense. Gim, Lefi Anal Hoyal Rabbi Akiva Loimer B'Tshuvasoi Etz Etzem Shitasoi D'Kol D'Avid Rachman L'Tavavid V'Achar Kachem Yesh Soydach L'Havi Echach L'Prat Zeh. If you're telling me that the whole machlokes is about do we say Kol Ma David Rachman L'Tavavid or not, so then get to the main point. Ha'ikir Chasam and HaSefer. Say first of all, you know why I'm laughing? Kol Ma David Rachman L'Tavavid. If you need to have more explanation, fine, I'll bring you some more explanation to that. But otherwise, you're missing the main point over here. So therefore, the Rebbe's approach is going to be, I'll give you a little bit of just to see where he's going with this. This is not so much about Kol Ma David Rachman L'Tav Avid, what's going to be later on. All the Chachamim believe that everything that happens is going to be for a good that's going to be later on. And that's like the story over there. Let's say the candle going out was not a good thing, but later on it saved his life. Later on, the rooster being killed saved his life. But now it wasn't something good. The Rebbe always points out the difference. That's the difference in נחmu and Gamzu. That he said Gamzu l'toiva. That this itself is good. Not it's going to be later for good. The question is, when you see something bad now, how is supposed to be our reaction about the case at the present? Not what it's going to be leading to, but what's taking place right now. And that's going to be the difference between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. Do we look at it now as a good thing? Or do we just say, yeah, later it's going to be good, but now it's something you cry about? So he's going to go back to the question that he asked originally. What was Rabbi Akiva's question? Why are they crying? It's obvious why they were crying. They weren't, you remember, they were going on a trip to Rome. All of a sudden, when did they start crying? When they heard Rome from afar. As he's soon going to point out, they went to Rome because they knew that Rome was a big power. Why did they start crying now? Because So they knew how powerful Rome was. So this is the question. Why are you crying now? All of them, like we said, they tore their clothes when they saw the Har HaTzoifim. לפיכך שואל רבי עקיבא ממה אתם בויכים מה הסחדש להם עכשיו שבגללו הסחילו הם בויכים. What's now? Now you're crying. What happened now? ההסבר לתשובה של רבי עקיבא הלא לקושים יושבים בטח והשקט ואנו בייס אדם הגרגל לקיים שרף באש הוא עצם העובדה שרואים היא במצב של בטח והשקט בגשמיס איננה מביא לבכי. And the Rebbe is going to turn it around even more so. For Rome to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, they have to be a superpower. They have to be strong. Because if not, then it's actually a busha for Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael was always attacked by the superpowers. It wasn't just like a third world country ever attacked Eretz Yisrael. Yidden were always attacked by the greatest and mightiest powers. Why? Because they're Bnei Shal Kadosh Baruch Hu. If they have to go into Golus, it's Ein Adoim, it's brought down in Lashon's Chazal, if they go into Golus by someone that is important, or they go into Golus by some idiot, somebody in the street. Adrab, he yoyse shal roim mit kifay l'toivas Yisrael. Kiva levonin, which goes on the base of Mikdash, ba'adir yipoil, will fall by a mighty one. It's much more embarrassing if a chash of a person is embarrassed by some idiot than if a chash of a person is embarrassed by another chash of a person. It's not such a terrible embarrassment. If they were destroyed by Rome, so therefore that Rome is strong is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. That wasn't their taina. They didn't say, you know what? Rome that destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, they're so strong. They didn't say that. Ki adrab zel l'toivus Yisrael, that Rome is so strong when they destroyed Beis HaMikdash. Lahakal esregesh abusha kid la'el. Tanasam haisa hiyoyse shal roim matzav shal betach v'hashket. Ba'oid anu beis hadoim ragle lekeinu saraf be'esh hu chilul shem shamayim benoisev lechilul shem Yisrael. Yes, Al-Kain. Im kol utzmasu shal roimi hu kedesh v'alvonin ba'adir yipol madua hi adain adir u betach v'hashkit gam achto kasher beis hamikdash kvar saraf. So this is the idea. The idea is, okay, it was accomplished what had to be accomplished. Now, exactly. But doim lakach gambim ura sheni beroisem shul sheyetz yatzem beis kodesh kadoshim heimro bekach chilul shem shamayim v'shem Yisrael shemakim shekosav by v'hazor hakorev yumas sheshum Yehudi aslo iskarev sham v'afilu l'kohen gadol who's called the kodesh hakadoshim shalam Yisrael amongst people. The Kohen Gadol is called Kodesh HaKadoshim. Asar likanos l'sham chutz mepamachs b'shonim yom kippur v'rak b'zois yaveh v'gam hu nachshav kizar b'chol hashana v'hine achshav shuolim hilchu bay. In other words, he uses the pasuk v'azar hakarev yumas adrab because it's not talking about the Kohen Gadol. It's talking about that everybody is considered a zar, and anybody is considered a zar, and now a shul even can go in. And the Rebbe, it says also in a footnote that we can even say that in the Pashta Pshat the Pasuk, you could say Vazor HaKarev Yumas is talking also about the Kodesh HaKadoshim, even though Al Pi Allah it's talking about being marked with the Karbonos. But it's talking about Pashat coming close. So the Zor that's coming close, where we put to death. And here the Shul comes in. Amnam nigzer shebeis hamikdash yecharev Yisrael yiglu ach madua yigarer ma'idei kach gam chilul Hashem v'chilul Shem Yisrael. You can destroy the Beis HaMikdash, but it doesn't have to be such a big chilul Hashem involved with it. It doesn't have to be such a chilul Shem Yisrael. Aleph, Roy Miyane Chebes Lishor Betach Vahashki Gam Lacher Churban Beis HaMikdash. Beis, Nevuas HaChurban Tzion Sada Techrash, Yachol is Kaim B'chalokim HaCherim Shal Beis HaMikdash. V'lav Dafke B'kodesh HaKadoshim, Makim Shafil Al Kadoshim B'yoysim Nemar V'azor HaKor of Yumas. It didn't have to be so bad. And this is going to be the point over here. That it's much worse than it had to be. This is going to be actually very important for the second part, the comparison of Uriah and Zechariah. Al kach on Rabbi Akiva, ma la'oivri ritzoyne kach, la'oiser ritzoyne al achas kama v'kama. He didn't say, kol ma da'avid rachman l'tavavid. But he said a little bit of a different reasoning. Achin kisharoy mishachanas betach, ba'oid beis al keim l'sarav ba'esh, harei zechil shem shemayim v'shem Yisrael. Aval ha'idei kach tehei gam ha'toiva g'doy le'yoiser. Al achas kama v'kama, kaloimer Rabbi Akiva ros ha'toiv ha'yoytzei, afilu matzlochas roimi, va'afilu michil shem shemayim v'Yisrael. That itself, that the roim is now successful, roimi is successful now, hashkid betach, from that itself is going to be the cause and the beginning of a great aliyah for the Yidden. That's necessary for it. It's part of it.
Basically, that they're even going lower than they even had to.
And that's going to make the Yidden go higher than it would have been without that. Zelum hazeh. That's what he's saying. Al achas kam v'kam. If lo ivre ritzoyne kach, al achas kam v'kam. But doim melakach gam b'sipur ha'sheni kiyum devos ha'churban b'milua ad sheshul yoytzim mikodesh hakadoshim, the worst type of churban that could be. Again, there's no hechrech that the kodesh hakadoshim has to be totally destroyed. To be able to be mekayim all the punishment seemingly that Eibishter wanted for the Churban Beis HaMikdash, you could destroy the Beis HaMikdash. You have to have a shul, yotzim Beis Kodesh Kadoshim. The Kodesh Kadoshim can be remaining some type of Kedush over there. Hu aichacha lakach shenevuas hagula shel Zechariah tiskayim b'sich leimusa about zekenim v'zekenes yoshim b'ari Yerushalayim b'chavis Yerushalayim. Lo yhaya lo yisafik hashem im kiyum anavua al kiyum anavua el al oifen hakiyum im b'siyah shleimus im lav kifi shemoitzim and misper Yehudim shebetoira, that even when the Eibishter promised something, there's different ways how the promises can be fulfilled. Just to give an example, let's say the Eibishter said that the Yidden will be Mitzrayim 400 years. So, could have been literally, could have been from when Yaakov went down to Mitzrayim, it would have been 400 years from when Yaakov went down to Mitzrayim. It wasn't that way. It was only Redusham, it was only 200 years, 210 years they were in Mitzrayim. What did the Eibishter do? The Eibishter found like a loophole. He said the Eretz Lohem begins so many years beforehand with Yitzchak, the Bris Ben Absadim, and so on. In other words, there are ways of making the Yehudim be just basic promises, basic ways how things are fulfilled, or it could be la'ela u'la'ela, the way it could be fulfilled. So, l'dugma, l'gabe nevuah sada techrash, yichoylo l'nvoya mekach tzmicha, one way how it could come out when you plant a field, it could be just vasafta de ganecha. That's one way. Charisha leads to tzmicha. Okay, you'll have grain come from that. Or yoiser, or be meyasharim, like it says about Yitzchak, they'll have 100 times as much. Or yoiser chitim kekloyis, it's brought down the Rashi b'chakoisai that the chitim were as fat as kloyis. V'af yoiser makach v'shiyir rak la'asid lav v'nigash chayrish b'kaitzer, that the one who plows the field meets the one that harvests the field. So aidei oifen kiyum nevuas hachurban hu chazas kiyum nevuas hagula ba'oifra naila b'yoiser. The nevuah that would come and the gilui that would come when Mashiach comes would be so much greater because the nefillah and the yerida and the galus was so much lower. Like the Rebbe is saying over here, the whole sikha, a term without using that term at all. I don't think anywhere in the sikha the Rebbe actually uses that term, but yerida l'tzoyrech aliyah, and not just yerida l'tzoyrech aliyah, but as much as the Yerida is, according to that is the Aliyah. The greater the Yerida is, the higher the Aliyah has to be. And I like to always give the mashal. If you invest, so I like to give a mashal when you invest. So if you invest $1 in something or $10 in something, and you get $5 profits, that's fine. But if you invest $1 million in something, you get $5 profit, that doesn't make any sense. Nobody's going to invest $1 million, even if it's a sure thing, to get $5 back. If you're investing $1 million, you expect to get hundreds of thousands, if not millions out of it. The fact that the Yerida was such a low Yerida, so from that Rabbi Akiva knew that the Aliyah that would be afterwards by the Geula would be like La'ela Uleil. Lefiza Muvan Madua who mitzayin dafkes and nevuas tzin sada technish. He could have used other things where it talks about the Churban. Charisha sada einana kidei lakalkala as ella lahepach. He echrechis kidei lahavis asada l'shleimus v'nasna aretz yivula. In other words, the tzin sada technish, even though it means kipshutai that the Beis Mikdash will be plowed over, but it also explains an inyan in the Churban in general. Don't look at the Churban as a Churban, but like the Rebbe speaks about, this concept, how is the Eibishter, I think you spoke about this also, how is the Eibishter allowed, the Eibishter is Makayim the Torah, how is he able to destroy the Beis HaMikdash? It's usher to be even noisit even achas from the bayis and from the Mizbeach. He's Makayim the Torah, how is he allowed to do it? But that's only if you're destroying Derech Hashchasa. But if you're taking it apart to remodel, to make it better, so then it's not considered harisa, it's not considered churban. It's called binyan. It's called remodeling. By using this pasuk, Tzion Sada Techrash, Charisha shows that Malchatchila, it's something positive. Plowing is to bring growth. Even al yidei hacharisha atzmicha charkach yidaboy ubehesem lacharishas sada kach yetiv atzmicha v'chech binyanenu churban beis hamikdash doim lacharisha shedavke b'emtzausa ba tzmichas hageula leficha kasherah Rabbi Akiva shachurban charisha nasa b'shleimus ad l'makim kodesh hakadoshim. It was the ultimate charisha. Hiva davar echacha lakach shegam Hagula hatzmicha te'asa b'siyah shleimus. Oistas.
This answers why dafka that pasuk.
Why dafka that pasuk when there was many psukim earlier in Navi that spoke about the Churban, the Beis HaMikdash? Because this message of Charisha brings out the whole point of Rabbi Akiva, that now, not just like we say, letav avid, it will be for good. Now it's already a matter of good. Here's the interesting halacha application that we were talking about before. That's only from the words of the Chachamim. So do you say we go according to the present, or do we look at the future? Yesh loymar shezeu ahezber l'machloikis bein Rabbi Akiva l'tanoi ma'achedim al kil shem shamayim v'shem Yisrael b'hoive. Should you be Machal Shem Shemayim now B'hoive? Should you be Machal Shem Yisrael B'hoive? Because of the greater, the more powerful Kiddush Hashem and Kiddush Shem Yisrael will be later. But Shememenu Yitzmach Kavur Zman Yisran Gadol Yisrael v'Kiddush Shem Shemayim Gadol Moed. Rabbi Gabriel, Rabbi Lazar Ben Zavi, Rabbi Shua Tzayvrim She'ein Lischashem B'Mash Yoytzim Mekach B'Asit Ela B'Matzav Achshavi Achshav ze hepech kiddush Shem Shemayim v'Shem Yisrael v'lachein ze goyrim lebechim. Rabbi Akiva soiver shegam b'hoive machriya hatitzah ba'osid v'lachein im mechil Hashem v'Shem Yisrael b'hoive titzmach mayla b'kiddush Hashem v'Shem Yisrael b'gula asida harei ze machriya b'hoive ad kidei kach shemesachik. Now he's going to bring another example. In other words, just like when it comes to a mitzvah, you tell the person that do this mitzvah now and we don't care about what's going to happen later, or there's a different approach. Don't do this mitzvah now. Don't fast on Tzom Gedalia. So you should be able to fast on Yom Kippur, which is a more important fast than Tzom Gedalia. Rabbi Akiva's approach was in a similar way. The Chilul Shem Shemayim, the Chilul Shem Yisrael now is worth it because just like not fasting on Tzom Gedalia is worth it, so you should be able to fast on Yom Kippur. The same thing, the Chilul Shem Shemayim now, the Chilul Shem Yisrael now is going to bring to a greater godless. Mashenki the Chachamim said, it's similar to what it says in the Gemara, Loi me uktzich v'loi me duvshich. Don't give me such a terrible Chil Shem Shemayim now and a Chil Shem Yisrael now, so later should be a greater Kiddush Shem Shemayim and later should be a Kiddush Shem Yisrael.
What's that?
I think it's actually a machlokes in the Achronim about it, if we do it that way or not. Then he's going to bring another halacha.
Is that Indian of Tzum Gedalia and Yom Kippur actually?
Yeah, it's a shayla halacha. There's different achronim that talk about this. I don't remember what the halacha is.
According to this, the Chachamim would have said that way, and Rabbi Akiva would have said this way.
That's the way it comes out. Even though he says in footnote 56, he says there's a way of being mechalik, because here we're talking about the same mitzvah, and over there it's talking about two separate mitzvahs, Tzom Gedalia and Yom Kippur. Now he's going to bring another question in halacha, but here it's not about one mitzvah versus another mitzvah, or a bigger mitzvah versus a lesser mitzvah, but a hidur mitzvah versus not such a hidur mitzvah, but then you have a different component. Yesh loymar shemachlekasam tluya gam b'sheila klalachs acheres hanageh yisrael inyaneinu im efshel l'kayim mitzvah l'chol pratel ach hayidei kach yifgam hahidur haklali shel mitzvah. That's one way. We'll soon see the example that he gives. Umetzad sheni mikayim moisa behidur yachzer prat, but a prat she'eina ma'akiv. It's not something that if you're missing that prat, it's not ma'akiv a mitzvah. Ma machriya kiyum a mitzvah l'chol pratel ayahidur haklali ba. Let's see the example he gives. Dugma l'kach yishayel zachroinim v'gab bris milah. Im yikayim was a mitzvah boiker behesem l'klal zrizim makdim l'mitzvahs, but you do it early in the morning. Not everybody's going to make it there. Yachzer b'rayvam hadras melech, which is a hidur mitzvah. Hadras melech. Mitzad sheni im yitcho yisel l'shamu cheres yoyser b'yoyim lo yiskayim zrizim makdimim ach yiskayim b'rayvam hadras melech. And therefore, ma machriya. What is the greatest? What is the greater thing? He brings over there an example. Let's say if you could be mekadesh the levana in the middle of the week, but in the middle of the week it's not as nice as when you do it in Shabbos to get clothes and you do it in lots of Shabbos and so on. So which one do we do? Or let's say a person has a chinuch set of daled minim, and he could use that right away the first thing he gets up in the morning, or later in the day he's going to get him a huderdik set of daled minim, the Rebbe says in the footnote. And so on, that there's different cases like this. Which do we do? Zrizim makdimim or not? Kach gam b'kach krucha machloik asam Yisrael yikablu schar al hiyoisam oiser etzaynoi ubeshas hageula yeh kiddush shem shemayim Yisrael kidul halon bepashtus. So let's see how he's going to explain it. Hashaylehi malchus roimi oivda avodah zarah yesheves betach v'hashket v'anu beis sarf v'chein shul sheyotzim beis kodesh hakadoshim hem kvar achshav chilul shem shemayim chisaron be'etzem ha'inyan shel kiddush Hashem l'umazois haschar hanayla yoyser sheyikabel Yisrael v'kiyum nevuah Zechariah b'oifen nifla b'yoyser hu behidur v'yisafa b'kiddush shem shemayim ucher yoyser. So the delay is not because you're not going to have Kiddush Shem Shemayim later if you don't have this Chil Hashem now. You will have a Kiddush Hashem later, but not such a great Kiddush Hashem. It's like you'll have the mitzvah now and you have the mitzvah later, but later you'll have a Hidur mitzvah. You'll have Roivam Hadras Melech. But now Lepoil, you have an opportunity to do the mitzvah of Milah. You're like pushing off a mitzvah. You should be doing it right now. Just like now you're having a worse Chil Hashem because later on you'll have a Hidur in the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. בעצם קידוש השם, למרות שאין זה חילול השם, כי בין כך ובין כך אין קידוש שם ישראל ושם שמיים לאחר חורבן. It's just degrees in חילול השם. But this, anyway, a state of חילול השם. הרי אין להסחשב בכך שמאוחר יויסר ינובע מכך הידור ויסוף בקידוש השם, לפיכך הסחילו בייכים. אך שיטת רבי עקיבא היא שההידור בכלולוס המצווה הוא מכריע, ולכן הידור מאוחר יויסר גובר על הפגם העכשווי, בעצם קידוש השם, פרט במצווה, לפיכך משחק, that's why he's laughing.
According to Rabbi Akiva, Hidur mitzvah is better. Reva Amahadis Melech is better.
That's right, because, and we see it, we see it now as well, that's right. And this is what we see, that he's Mesachik now in the, what looks like a bigger Chilul Hashem. Kach u'boifen klali. So, up till now we explained it in the general way. Guys are ready to go into the details, or? You're dismissed if you want to go.
I'll watch the rest.
Yeah, you guys are up to it? We can handle it? Kach u'boifen klali. Protius yesh chidush b'sipur hasheni al rishon b'chol shloishes haprotim anal. So now the Rebbe is going to show, you remember we said, if there's two stories, then there's got to be something that each one adds. Kol da'avid rachmana l'tav avid. That's one approach. Then there's ha'eschachvus l'gaba ha'hoive b'teitzah sheba'asid. And then there's achros prat b'mitzvah hider b'chlos ha'mitzvah. So these are three different things that you see a different approach in both of these stories. David Rabbi Akiva called David Rachman l'tav avid mechuvanim l'davar shebahoive hurah el shekavanosa yilutayv. K'fi shenira ma'adugma shemebi agmar Rabbi Akiva atzmai hu lon basadish mechutz la'ir va'avid es chamoyri v'tarna goyloi v'neirei kava u'mekach nova achar kach toiva shal tzols nafshi k'loimar ha'maisa atzmai hu tzar achu leman toiva. Again, this is something that Rebbe always brings down, the difference between by Nachmish Gamzu and Rabbi Akiva. Even though the Rebbe says that over here, you remember I was saying that the Rebbe brings down in the Ha'ara that even though we usually make the difference between Rabbi Akiva and Nachmish Gamzu, that Rabbi Akiva was about later and Nachmish Gamzu is now, but it seems to be from the whole stories in the Gemara over here, we're talking about now he was laughing, which means that he saw it, seeing B'sad Techresh, he looks at it as a positive thing. So the Rebbe says like this, when it comes to a private thing, so then you could say that by Rabbi Akiva he's going to say later it's going to be good. But something is negate to the whole Klal Yisrael, something is negate to Gulas Yisrael, the Rebbe says Na'ara, that is something that has to be now already good. And that's why Rabbi Akiva Mesachik. So even though he holds Kol Madav Rachman L'Tav Avid in general as a rule, that's later, but when it comes to this, it's now already the positive, the good. Hasan l'kach muva adin shemer sagemara shakash bagas al badam ram lam roy shemeucher yoyser yetz mekach toiv kigoin shebol shataf al sadeu. Got flooded. Afal pishak sheyaver shataf toiv lo shish sadeu. So the Gemara asks, what type of bracha should he make? Should he make a bracha of Eidav thanking the Eibishter shachiyanu or atoiv v'meitiv, or should he make a bracha of Baruch Daina Amos, which you make on any loss really? So levarach Baruch Daina Amos ki hashta miharai. And that's just like, even though we say that loymar kol madav rachman l'tav avid, but it's going to be later because now it's bad. Be'inyan shel loymar kol David maskimim gam Rabbi Gamliel v'Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah v'Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Akiva, like we said before, it's halach in Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't seem like something that they were arguing about. Hachidush binyaneinu hu Rabbi Akiva lo ra b'ra shul sheyetze mikodesh kadoshim rak toitza toiva el ra oisa atzma kechelek v'haschala shel hatoiv, and that's why he gave the example of charisha, like we said before, that charisha is not a bad thing. Someone that doesn't know anything about agriculture is going to look, what are you doing? It's such a nice field, and you go and you turn it over. So he says, no, this is the way you plant, this is the way things grow. It's a Ha'ara 69 is what I was saying, Benegeya, about that you could see Begoli, when it comes to Gulas Am Yisrael, it has to be Begoli the Indian, it's not for later on. Anyway, Kach Lefi Maimer Chazal HaPasik, Kila Hashem as Chamasa. The famous Maimer Chazal says, Mizmar la'asaf. It's a song for Asaf that Hashem was Mechalech Hamasai al Eitzim V'avonim. They destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara asks, why is it a Mizmar? Why is it a song? What type of song is it? What type of praise is it? What type of thanks is it to the Eibishter that Kilas Hamasai? So the Gemara says, he finished off his anger. He let his anger out on the Eitzim Avonim, and he let the Yidden remain. Kila Hashem is Hamas el Eitzim Avonim v'lo shafach Hamas el Bnei Yisrael ulefichach ein ze bechila Asaf, like the Gemara asks, ela mizmar la'asaf v'kila Hamas Yisrachesh, the ultimate, not just by destroying the Beis HaMikdash Stam, but even the Kodesh Kadoshim, Shaydei Shuolim, Holchom Beis Kodesh Kadoshim, Yerushalayim Le'in. It says later on in the Gemara that in the Pasuk it says Yerushalayim became like piles and piles. Amnam, Gam B'Sipar Arishon Mesachik, V'Gam Bo Yesh Chidush B'Chlal, Kol Da'avid Rachman. Sharei, HaKlal Chol B'Protim Elu. Aleph, Yoidim Sha'ara Hi L'Tav, Ach Ein Yoidim Ma'u Atov. You know, you see, the Tarnagol died, so he says, L'tav Ovid. But what is the good? I don't know. Beis Zoyirah Shal'Tav Ovid, Ach Gam L'Loi Kol Ha'inyan Hayatov. Here's an interesting point. K'dugma Rabbi Akiva. Let's say, if he didn't have a donkey, he didn't have a candle, and he didn't have a chicken, he left them all home, so that he would have also been saved. See, so it's only a partial good. She'im l'chatchila lo ha'y l'chamor v'tarnagel v'chuloi gam kin nitzol v'ilo asibir binyoneinu einu kach ma lo yirritzoyne kach lo yirritzoyne alachas kam v'kama alef huroya shekach ma yatoy v'sheteitzei beis tiyate elis yoyser ma shahoysa lulazoys. In other words, he sees the good. He sees that it will not just, it will be good, I don't know how. Like Rabbi Akiva had no idea what's going to be the good from his cattle going out. Later he saw it. But this, he knows kach. He sees Rome is successful, so he knows the Yidden will be alachas kam v'kam, they'll be successful. He saw right away what the good will be. And not only was it part of it for good, but the entire thing of it was for good. In the second story, it's more revealed what the good will come out. He brought the psukim over there, and so on. So now he goes, Kach gam l'gabeshteh, Shailas ha'cheres. Lefi ha'hez b'reshat eitzah, ba'asid machrial kim ha'mitzvah b'hoive, v'kach gam l'gabadeir, sha'ahidr b'chlal ha'mitzvah machrial, prati ha'mitzvah atzma, hari ha'siba l'kach hi, shezeh ma shemachriya u'mizgaber. What is stronger of the two? The hidr, the kiyum ha'mitzvah later, or now? Kalayim, bepula shebahoive v'chei l'gabe ha'prat shebemitzvah zu zeu p'gam kayim, ela shamayla ba'asid v'ahidr ha'klali goyver ola v'cheinu b'sipar rishon. If you don't have the mitzvah done in the morning, you're missing the zrizim akdim l'mitzvahs, even though you have later breivam hadash melech. If you don't fast on Tzom Gedalia, you're missing the fast of Tzom Gedalia. V'ilu b'sipar ha'sheni, it's much more even than this. Hari aladas Rabbi Akiva loirak shateitzav ahidor machrim al pnei apula shebahoive. That's worth it. This type of this type of thing that the Oivda Avodah are successful. El shuroya kan rak es milas ha'asid, like the field that's being plowed. Koloim Rabbi Akiva roya ki ilu ahidor shel kiddush shem shemayim v'Yisrael ba'asid. Kvar hischil bepula shebahoive b'mesh nira kibgam bekiddush Hashem v'Yisrael. He saw this itself. He saw as the beginning. He saw as the start. Just like we said before, charisha, plowing is the beginning of growth. Zoya sibalakach shedafke b'mura sheni v'loy berishon amr lo Akiva Nichamtanu, Akiva Nichamtanu. We didn't understand. There was a question. Why dafke in that case did they tell him that? Hashoini bepirush ha'inyan shel shul sheyatzon beis kodesh chadash fi Rabbi Akiva leumas das sharat hanoim hu b'shnei dvarim ledaitom hemro inyan shel hepech hatoiv ha'ma'or lebchi. That was one problem. Das Rabbi Akiva loy rak shetzarech liris hatoiv kiddush shem shemayim v'Yisrael hasholem sheyetzim mekach ele yoysim mekach hatay ela shebegeula einana davar hatoiv haneveh medavar acher ra. It's one thing that's happening. It's a good thing that's happening. The churban is a good thing that's happening. Lechurban atzma yesh yisrael shel charishas hasadam shehamshacha hu or shehemshecha hu zriya v'tzmicha v'zoi nechama kfula aleph hamayla v'ahida sheba'asid and Beis Ha'mayla Kayamas B'Hoiva. You have now already that Maila. You don't have to wait for later on. How do you know? How do you know that that Maila is now? D'chsiva idali edim as Uriah Kohen v'Zacharia. Ha'posik atzmei matzbiya bakach she'ein meduber b'shnei dvarim shnoinim al b'davar echad k'may edis al b'shnei edim nasa metzias achal shal edis nevuas Zacharia v'nevuas Uriah heim Eidos achas. When you have witnesses, you have two witnesses. It's not, let's say, one aide says, I saw him pick up the stone, and the other aide I saw him throw a stone. That's not Eidos. Eidos are the two Eidos are the same thing. Here you're calling Uriah that's talking about the destruction, and Zechariah that's talking about the building. You're calling them the same Eidim. That means it's one event. They're both talking about the same event. How can they be talking about the same event? This is Churban, this is Geula. Because Churban and Geula are two parts of the same coin. Like Charisha and Zriya or Charisha and Tzmicha. Loikach b'sipar Arishan. Sheboy hay Rabbi Akiva Masachik beglal hasiba. Ma la'oiver retzoyne kach la'oiser retzoyne lachas kam v'kam. So there it's two separate things. There's oiver retzoyne, there's oiser retzoyne. Harei zerach l'das Rabbi Akiva. V'ilu atanoim acherim nishru b'daitam. Shuvin yuchot shekam sarich liris toiv shel davar echad oiser retzoyne. Medavar acher oiver retzoyne. Two separate things. There's Romans that are oiver retzoyne, and there's the Yidden that are oiser retzoyne. And from them, you learn about them. But it's not one thing. Val kach hu loy nos la mechacham min apasaki b'sipur hasheni. Shememenu yilmedu b'kal v'chaymer. Over l'gab b'sipur harishon. So now the Rebbe goes into something that often he talks about. We have this also in the Haggadah, where the Rebbe talks about the different people that were, let's say, Mesubim b'Bnei Brak. And they were talking about Yitzias Mitzrayim, Klois HaLayla. The Rebbe goes into why dafke those does he talk about, those Chachamim, because each one had something unique. The same thing over here. We said, it could have just said, there were the Zkeinim that held this way, and Rabbi Akiva held that way. There's a hira from the names itself. Kach nitn lahazber sasiva lakach, shagmar mefaretes es shemes kol atanoim. Kaidei kach muvenes hasiba lamachlakoisam. Rabbi Gamliel hoyanasi. He was also Yisrael, like it also talks about over there in the Haggadah. Mishevet Yehuda. Rabbi Loz ben Azari hoya koyin. Doir asiri le'ezra. Not stam ha-koyin, ha-koyin miyuchas. Rabbi Yeshua hoya Levi, min ha-meshorim. And Rabbi Akiva hoya ben Gerim. The pashtus mi yachaliris bel-umazeh betzad shal hepech ha-toiv. Es bittel hara sheboy gam kashur betokfoy. Ha-mayla shebechurben ba'ofen shal Nechama kfula. Or in Lashon Chassidus, Yisra nav oira b'omen ha-choshech. That's dafke someone that has a shaykhus with the choshech. Dafke misha boy atzmi yisrachish tal kazeh. Bedoymel adivri ha-gemara shedafke evadya nibba al mapelas edom. Because Evadya geir edoimi hoya. And because he was a geir of Edom, so he was the one that said in the Nevuah against Edom itself. That you take the wood for the axe itself, you take from the forest. So the forest that you're gonna knock down with the axe, you get from there the wood for the axe. So that's the same thing that Rabbi Akiva was a Ben Gadim. So he sees the good in the darkness. Like Cain Ben Yisrael, Kayin Levi Yisrael, Sheinen Yochalir says Ba'atzmai. Etzloi Zau Chidush. Zau gam a hevdel b'neim b'shittas ba'alacha im a hoiva machriya ya asid Haprat b'mitzvah, hider b'chlos ha-mitzvah, which is more important, to have the prat of zrizim akdimim, or to have the hider b'rei v'am hadras melech. Davke Rabbi Akiva, shebenoisav li Yosef ben Gerim, hu hischal lilmei Torah rak b'Yosef ben Arboim. Hareim hoya mabit u'mischashem matzavi b'hoive, loy hoya magia lemadreges Rabbi Akiva. And he had to also use a kal v'chomer, that Rabbi points out. He said, if the waters can go through a stone, for sure my heart. So he had the same approach. He used the kal v'chomer again. That the water made a hole in the rock. But the rest of these, Chashva people, Rabbi Gamliel, Anasi, Rabbi Yeshua, Levi, they can't see, they don't know what it's like to come from a negative place to a positive place. They're only living in a positive place. Now we're getting back to what we started in the beginning of the Sikha. נחמו, נחמו עמי. על פני הגולס והחורבן באופן של לוקו בכפליים. לוקו בכפליים מסבט בכך. שבנויסף לעצם החורבן והגולס וההפך כדשם שמיים וישראל בכך, הרי יש גם חיל שם שמיים וישראל ביוסר. יויסר ממה שאשר עצם החורבן והגולס כמוסבר לאל על המסובר בספר מקדש מקס הלול משתח ומיושם בטח והשקט והנו שיוצא בית קודש הקדוש. In other words, the Rebbe is saying here a new pirush in Loko B'Kiflayim. The way we explained it in the beginning, that Chazal, that Mefarshim explained, what was the Loko B'Kiflayim? Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni, that's Loko B'Kiflayim. Here he's talking about Loko B'Kiflayim, a totally different thing. It's a double mapola. There could have been just Stam HaChurban, there could have been just Stam HaChil Hashem, HaChil Shem Yisrael, or there's like our Sikha talks about terrible Churban, the Shul Yotza, Rome is Hashkin or Betach. ובהסם לקח גם הנחמה בכפליים בנויסף לנחמה שהטויבה שבעצם החורבן מסגלה שכל זה היה כדי שיסגלו גילוי העשידה הרי מסגלוס גם המיילה שבהיסופס שבחורבן לוקו בכפליים וזה עצמי באופן של נחמה בכפליים כלומר לא רק שיורגש הירידה הגדולה הייסה כדאיס כדי להגיע לתספס בהידו בזמן הגאולה אלא שיחושו בטויבה שבסופה בחורבן בגולוס עצמה ועל כך אומרים אוידך הוואי כי הנפת בי. In the Golus itself, it's going to be the thanks. So in other words, when Mashiach comes, it's not a pshat, okay, now all bad things are going to stop. Everything that happened in the past is gone. It's more than that. We're going to thank Hashem. We're going to give a toida to the Eibishter for the fact that he was angry at us. In other words, in the negative itself is already over to the positive. The fize yesh lahazber saremes leina Nechama parashasein kedivre Chazal asherashim mitzatet kan. Alayra ki soiled banim bnei banim v'neshantim ba'aretz. So Rashi says an interesting Rashi. B'chlal, you don't see gematrias in Rashi that often, not in Chumash. I think this is one of two places where the Rashi says a gematria. So he says, "V'neishantim ba'aretz." Says, this is the Kriya, by the way, on Tisha B'av in the morning. It says, "Neishantim, you'll be old a long time in Eretz Yisrael, and then it'll come bad times on the Yid." So he says, "V'neishantim sheramaz lahem sheyiglu memeno l'soif ches meis v'nun beis shana keminya v'neishantim." That's the gematria of Neishantim was 852 years. Who higdem the Eibishter v'higlam l'soif ches meis v'chamishim, 850 years after they came. V'higdem beis shanim l'Neishantim. He took off 2 years out of the gematria of Neishantim. Why? Kedei shelo yiskayim b'em ki avet tevedun. What it says later in the pasuk, by not being mekayim v'Neishantim, so then the avet tevedun won't be niskayim also. Vayishkod means he did it quickly, like we say Makal Shokid by Yirmiyahu, that the Eibishter brought the Geula quickly. Tzedakah asi manu shemir lahavia beis shalom fnei zmana, because that ensured that we will survive. It won't be avet tevedin. Kalim Lo rak hamayla vatel shebegolos atzma shehevi. Ule bekash k'mishom tzashem alakechem matzas k'drishano v'shavta davai alakecha. That comes dafkif out of the darkness of Golus. Ubekashtem mishom, from there, from the Golus. Elagamas ha'yisrin shebagdamas ha'Golus. That it started 2 years earlier than it should have been. Shemavateles as avet hevedun. Vaydei masein same as managolos niski begoli mamish Nachmu v'yosim mekain la noichi menachemchem, which is the haftarah of the following week. But bias Mashiach tzedkeinu. So the nekudah, what the Rebbe is saying over here about the Nachmu is that the idea of the double Nechama is to show that it's a Nechama that in the Yerida itself, the fact that it went such a powerful Yerida, so it has such a greater Nechama. A double Nechama means double in quality. Kiflaim l'tashiyah doesn't mean double twice, but because there's no purpose, no big deal about double twice. But l'fi oifen ha'yerida, it went so low, that's how high the aliyah was.